Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Yet another technical snafu for Southwest Airlines. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma in for Maya Trabulsi. Southwest flights were briefly grounded nationwide today, months after a meltdown that stranded thousands of travelers over the Christmas holiday. As KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen shows us, the shutdown caused delays out of San Diego International Airport.
You can almost sense the resignation on these travelers' faces as they stare at the display screen full of flight delays. Nationwide, more than 1,800 Southwest flights were delayed after a technical issue caused planes to be grounded briefly. Eric Kozakowski had just boarded his flight from Denver to San Diego when it happened.
We were probably sitting in the plane after we boarded for another, I don't know, hour and a half, something like that.
He's in town for a bachelor party, and this wasn't the first time he's had issues with Southwest Airlines. His flight was delayed for 4 hours back in December when computer issues grounded much of Southwest flights for days.
That was actually a different wedding that I was going to. But yeah, we were flying out of Denver, and we hadn't boarded yet. We were just waiting, and they just kept saying that the crew or the pilot was on the way. And
Southwest said this morning's disruption was a result of a computer firewall failure. In a statement, the airline says, in part, a vendor-supplied firewall went down and connection to some operational data was unexpectedly lost.
Southwest says the issue has been resolved, but it caused a cascading effect. As you can see behind me, lots of delayed flights. Because if a plane can't get here, it means people can't get on that plane to go to the next destination.
At San Diego International this afternoon, 6 flights were canceled and more than 100 flights were delayed. Janet Webb was one of those people with a flight delay. She got an alert from the airline this morning.
It was only half an hour the first time, and then I got another alert within 20 minutes that it was going to be over an hour.
You think it's going to be more?
I'm going to stay optimistic.
Webb heard about what happened to Southwest last December, and that made her hesitant to fly with the airline this time. Experts say today's incident, while minor, adds to the erosion of Southwest's image. For Kozakowski, he thinks there might be a wedding curse.
yeah, maybe. Maybe I need to stop going to all my friends' weddings.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
San Diego County Public Defender Randy Mize is planning to retire this summer. He made the announcement Monday in an email to employees. It comes after millions of dollars in payouts by the county related to wrongful termination lawsuits filed by former deputy public defenders. An outside law firm is currently investigating multiple complaints of a pattern of discrimination and retaliation in the office under Mize's leadership. KPBS obtained a copy of Mize's resignation letter in which he wrote that, quote, "It never feels like the right time to exit, but now feels damn close." County spokespeople have so far not confirmed his exit. You can read more online at kpbs.org. Once again, San Diego County is reporting a death inside one of its jails. The Sheriff's Department says 53-year-old Eddie Faulkner died last night at the Vista Detention Facility. According to a sheriff's press release, staff tried to revive Faulkner with CPR. He was found alone in his cell. The Sheriff's Department says he was arrested in November on outstanding warrants. This is the latest in a series of in-custody jail deaths that have drawn criticism from jail reform advocates. Federal health authorities are working to simplify COVID vaccination recommendations. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says if you're older than 65 or immunocompromised, you will soon be eligible to get a second dose of the updated boosters.
The FDA is moving towards making COVID vaccines more like flu shots. Pfizer and Moderna's bivalent vaccines are available for everyone ages 6 months and over. Those doses were rolled out late last year, and they're updated to protect against COVID's latest variants.
What they're trying to do is really to use that model that we have for the seasonal influenza vaccination to update their recommendations, and so basically make this a seasonal vaccine.
The FDA says most people who are vaccinated but haven't gotten the updated bivalent vaccines can get a single dose. And now those over 65 can get an additional booster at least 4 months after their first. Those who are immunocompromised can get another booster at least 2 months after their first. The guidance is pending CDC approval, which could come later this week. Health officials say the updated vaccines don't prevent infections, but they will reduce risk post-infection.
Now, data after data has shown that, one, you are protected from getting severe disease, from hospitalization and death. Second, that your chances of getting long COVID or getting, other complications are much lower.
Protection wanes over time, and there may be new variants each year, which means the vaccines could be updated each season. The FDA says almost all Americans 5 and older have some protection from COVID, either from previous vaccinations or infections. Most people under 65 who have gotten one bivalent booster are not eligible for a second dose yet, but more guidance is coming soon. San Diego County is still holding pop-up vaccination sites like this one at Grossmont College. The county's COVID-19 website shows each day where these different vaccination events are being held. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A group of Cal State student workers is taking the first step toward unionizing. They are students with support jobs like library assistants and clerical work and other positions not related to academics. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more.
All right, let's see if that works. It's a picture-perfect moment for San Diego State junior Gracie Hansa. She is signing up for her union card with hopes to join the California State University Employees Local 2579 someday soon. She's barely surviving with her 2 campus jobs as a dorm resident advisor and mentor at the SDSU Women's Resource Center.
Receiving minimum wage is really, really difficult for a full-time student, and I think that not having any paid time off or any sick pay is really, really a big struggle for so many students across the CSU system.
Monday morning, 4,000 signatures from Cal State non-academic student workers were delivered to the Public Employment Relations Board, known as PERB, in Sacramento. They are petitioning PERB to authorize them to vote to unionize. They have the support of the established Cal State Employees Union and its 15,000 members.
Their employer is a public university charged with opening doors for Californians of limited means through education. Joining together in union is the only pathway these students have to gain a voice at the CSU.
And those voices are getting louder.
Imagine paying $340 a semester for parking just to work for minimum wage.
If you're sick, you just don't get paid. So it almost feels like the university penalizes us for getting sick.
Labor unions have been a part of the American economy for decades. Student workers organizing on a college campus is much more recent, especially here in San Diego County.
You and I, we out here are part of the largest strike in academic history.
Last December, UC graduate students ended a 40-day strike after reaching a bargaining agreement with the university system. Among other things, they won higher wages and new protections against harassment and retribution from faculty. Back at the 23 Cal State campuses, the campaign continues to sign student workers up for their opportunity to vote to join the union. In a written statement from Cal State Communications, a spokesperson said the California State University is not involved in this organizing effort, but acknowledges all workers' rights to organize. In the event student employees are formally recognized by the California Public Employment Relations Board, we look forward to engaging with them as we do with all of our other union partners. It's up to the State Public Employment Relations Board to validate signatures and the student workers' request to let them vote on their employment futures. MG Perez, KPBS News.
The Los Angeles County Unified School District has reached a tentative deal with the teachers union for smaller classes and better pay. Per the agreement, teachers will receive a 21% pay raise over 3 years, and class sizes across all grades will be reduced by 2 students. The district will also offer more mental health support for students by adding social workers, psychologists, and counselors. Union members will have to ratify the new contract before it can take effect. Production of many of your favorite shows and films could soon come to a screeching halt. The Writers Guild of America voted overwhelmingly to go on strike if no labor deal can be reached before a May 1st deadline. Mike Valerio explains what writers are fighting for and what a potential strike could mean for viewers.
A strike is a brutal thing.
For Writers Guild of America negotiators, a record 97.9% approval to authorize a strike is a major weapon at the negotiating table.
The unfortunate nature of our business is that everything that the Writers Guild has achieved, minimum compensation, pension and health benefits, residuals, has all come from either a strike or the real threat of one.
The WGA says the rise of streaming and the shortening of traditional TV seasons are making it difficult for members to make a living wage.
We're just looking to be fairly compensated for the value we create.
The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers represents several major entertainment companies. They've released a statement reading in part, quote, "Our goal is and continues to be to reach a fair and reasonable agreement." On strike, shut down! The last writer's strike came in 2007 and lasted 100 days, but today's landscape looks very different.
We were just catching up to production stoppages and COVID encumbrances.
The impact of a strike would reverberate from Hollywood backlots to America's living rooms.
What you're looking at is sort of shows that you are anticipating a season coming up with in the next few months could be delayed as much as a year, if not more, depending on how the strike plays out.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio reporting.
One reason for labor disputes is the rising cost of living, primarily in housing. Census data shows more than half of millennials are now homeowners in the U.S. But as KPBS's Thomas Fudge reports, that's not the case in San Diego.
The new census information seems like some good news for millennials. The data was broken down in a new study by the online home data center Apartment List. Despite the challenge of affordability, many members of that age group have found a place to buy.
Millennials have always struggled to buy homes, facing incredible house price appreciation. But at the same time, according to the latest data, the millennial homeownership rate has actually passed 50%.
Of course, it's a lot harder to afford a home in San Diego than in the rest of the country. Here, millennial home ownership has also increased, but the rate for that age group is only 34%. San Diego is fourth from the bottom among American metro areas in that category. One thing census data also reveal is that for every age group, home ownership is at a lower percentage than it was in past decades. Warnock uses the example of millennials.
Their home ownership rate is about 5 percentage points lower than Gen X was when they were in their 30s, and is about 7 percentage points lower than baby boomers when they were in their 30s.
A recent study of home ownership in Europe conducted by UC San Diego researchers shows home ownership is seen as a shield against inflation. A history of high inflation in some countries has led to high home ownership rates there.
If people think that real estate is a good inflation hedge and they expect high inflation in the future, then they're going to be more likely to be a homeowner because they want to be able to protect themselves from that high inflation.
Warnock says homeownership is a good hedge against rental inflation, and in America, it's the primary vehicle for creating family wealth. But more and more, finding a down payment and paying a mortgage is financially out of reach.
For millennials who don't own a home, we survey them and we find an increasing share of them have been saying, I'm never going to own a home. I just can't afford it.
73% of baby boomers in San Diego own their own home. That's more than double the rate for San Diego millennials and 5 percentage points lower than the national average. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, Fox News agrees to a multi-million-dollar settlement in a case challenging its lies about the 2020 election. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Race and gun rights are once again being scrutinized in two separate shootings getting national attention. Both involve victims who police say mistakenly showed up at a wrong address. Laura Aguirre tells us how these are the latest incidents prompting calls for justice.
2 states, 2 address mix-ups, 2 people shot. Kansas City teen Ralph Yarl out of the hospital but recovering at home from 2 gunshots. His family says his physical healing is just the beginning.
He's going to forever have a scar on his head that's going to remind him that I was shot because of the color of my skin.
Police say 84-year-old Andrew Lester faces felony charges in the shooting. Yarl came to Lester's house April 13th by mistake to pick up younger siblings. In a probable cause statement, Lester says he fired because Yarl was touching an exterior front door handle. Yarl told police he never pulled on the door and didn't speak to Lester. The shooting sparking outrage in the community as many walked in unity Tuesday demanding justice for Yarl and his family. 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis in rural upstate New York killed Saturday when the car she was riding in turned into the wrong driveway.
So there's absolutely no reason for this man to come out on the deck and shoot at the vehicle, especially when they're leaving.
That man, 65-year-old Kevin Monahan, is now charged with second-degree murder. Monahan's attorney tells CNN that his client has no trespassing signs posted, and he felt threatened.
You know, they were turning around, leaving, so there certainly was no threat. So, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get a successful prosecution.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Those who served in the first Gulf War will be the focus of a new study to learn more about Gulf War syndrome. The VA and National Institutes of Health will work together over a 5-year period. Some of that work will be done here in California. Federal agencies have disagreed over a formal definition of the illness. Some veterans of the Persian Gulf War in the early 90s said they dealt with lingering tiredness, memory lapses, and stomach problems. A positive update on Demar Hamlin. He's the Buffalo Bills player who collapsed from a heart attack during a Monday night football game nearly 4 months ago. Hamlin had to be resuscitated on the field today. He was given the all clear by doctors to resume his playing career. The Bills say 3 different heart specialists reviewed his health and that they are happy to welcome him back. San Diego State recently renamed its East Commons Mall in honor of Charles Bell. He was a mathematician and the first tenured African-American faculty member at SDSU. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on this black pioneer in the world of academics.
On March 27, San Diego State's East Commons became the Charles B. Bell Pavilion. Charles Bell died in 2010, but his widow and 3 of his kids were there to cut the ribbon. Tanika Green was also there. She was the university's first Charles Bell Scholar and is now an associate vice president at SDSU.
He was a pioneer, a trailblazer. He was someone who contributed to mathematics in strong and creative ways. People might wonder who he is, but now that it's institutionalized and on a building, it gives people the power now to find out who he was and the impact he made on campus.
Charles Bell was born in New Orleans in 1928, and he quickly got started learning and loving mathematics. How quickly? He enrolled in Xavier University, a historically black college, at age 14. He earned his master's degree from Notre Dame by age 19. He didn't get his doctorate until he was 24, but Bell's daughter, Karen Bell Shirley, said his doctorate was delayed by 2 years due to an unexpected conflict.
A man in, I believe it was Germany, had written his thesis on the exact same topic. And because the topics had to be unique, and because this man preceded him by a couple of months, they couldn't give my father his PhD. So he had to go back to the starting board, and he had to find another topic that was unique.
Charles Bell was author of 40 academic papers, many of them focused on statistics. His son, C.B. Bell, along with his sister, said their dad was demanding of them as kids.
When I was in high school, he had enrolled me in a summer class in geology at University of New Orleans, and that was from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. And then my sister and I, and my best friend, took calculus from him from 5 to 8, 6 nights a week, all summer.
Bell's career was constantly on the move. He left SDSU after 6 years to teach at Tulane University and the University of Michigan, just to name two. He taught math overseas at many institutions, including the University of Madrid and Göttingen University in Germany. He insisted his 4 kids learn the local language wherever they lived, and, as CB put it, he threw them into local schools and expected them to cope. Bell returned to San Diego State in 1981 and retired there 11 years later. CB adds that one ever-present home furnishing, no matter where they lived, was a chalkboard.
So everywhere we lived, I think my mom was the one that went out and procured these chalkboards, and we'd get usually 2 of them, just like in a classroom. And he would have those at home, and sometimes he'd be teaching us stuff, and sometimes he'd be in there just rattling off what just looks like some sort of mad genius formulas.
Charles Bell's career was remarkable, especially due to racial discrimination. He went to Notre Dame University because they wouldn't admit a black graduate student at LSU in the late 40s. Even though Notre Dame admitted him, CB says his father could not live in the dorms because he was black. CB says his father's mathematical thinking allowed him to disregard racism in a way because it made no sense. He says it helped that Charles Bell was always the smartest person in the room.
For him, it was just you do the stuff and then you get the reward. You did the proof, then you have the proof. Then you have it. I mean, you can't decide, well, we don't like it because you're black. That's not even part of the thing. I think that just never entered his mind.
But Karen Bell said despite this, her father was aware of race and taught his children black history lessons using his own books that told the story of black luminaries.
He always told me, he goes, no one will ever teach you this, so I'm going to teach you. You need to know that we came from people who have made a big, huge contributions to this country, to the world. And you need to know that.
The Charles B. Bell Pavilion on a weekday is a plaza filled with students talking on their phones, rolling by on skateboards, and walking to the food court. Brandon Gamble, director of the Black Resource Center at San Diego State, says Charles Bell is part of a tradition.
People can actually come to the campus here at San Diego State and take a Black Excellence Tour and learn about Harold Brown, who was an outstanding basketball player, but more importantly, who was the first black administrator here on campus, right? Or hear about Shirley Weber, who is our current Secretary of State, but she was also professor in the Africana Studies Department.
And he says Charles Bell is a big part of that story. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
That story is an example of the feature reporting done by the KPBS Newsroom. You can find more at the KPBS YouTube page. That's also where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition weeknights at 5. The city of San Diego is making headway on an important piece of its climate action plan. The Transportation Department is conducting an inventory of trees in an effort to grow the urban forest. So far, the department has surveyed about 80% of city trees. They say natural landscapes contribute to cooler air, improved mental health, and more livable communities.
Trees are important because they provide so many ecosystem benefits to our community, including stormwater runoff. They sequester carbon and store carbon. They're also important, too, because just common features that trees provide, such as shade to our communities.
Residents can request a tree for their parkway through the free Tree SD program on the City of San Diego webpage. However, you'll have to water it.
It's been breezy for quite some time over the mountainous terrain, some of the high deserts. The wind begins to back off somewhat on Wednesday. We'll also talk about a warming trend and a dry stretch of weather here over the course of the next couple of minutes. I do want to jump into those wind advisories first, these persisting until those very early morning hours for tomorrow on Wednesday. Pine Valley, Julian, Borrego Springs, and then points out off toward the east and to the north. So the winds here have been locally gusty, and they'll continue to stay that way at least for a little bit while longer. Turning out cloudy for tonight. Some of those low clouds rolling back in. Temperatures will be dropping down into the mid-50s. Area-wide, I think there'll be lots of 50s on the board. Can't see some 40s too around Ramona down to 45. Borrego Springs into the upper 40s. There's the wind that you'll feel and hear toward Mount Laguna as we slip all the way down to 38. Chula Vista down to 52. So some morning clouds. But conditions for the afternoon look nice. In fact, a nice afternoon coming up here. A nice late day for some baseball. Temperatures climbing into the mid-60s. Borrego Springs up to 81. Mount Laguna tops off at around 50 degrees. And not a whole lot in the way of cloud coverage toward the afternoon. I still think in the morning, though, we'll definitely notice some of the clouds in place, but less of a tendency to see that as we go further down the road in your extended forecast. So I want to take you there now with less cloudiness in the morning and less of an onshore flow. We'll also notice a response to the temperatures, and they're climbing. 70 Thursday at the coast. We're pushing 80 Friday. It does back off a little bit later on this weekend, but a dry stretch nonetheless. Interior valleys also climbing here with less clouds. We're back in the 80s Friday into Saturday. Sunday we slip a bit back into the 70s. The howling wind will begin to subside later on Wednesday toward the mountains, and here too a little bit of a climb as we work our way toward late week, but still a little bit on the chilly side. Overnight lows trickling down into the 40s, and the desert's looking like this, heating up especially as we work our way into the weekend. Highs at that point up into the 90s. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.